Okay, now the lyrics I want to discuss are from the Gridlock soundtrack. The title of the lyrics is Lady Heroin, and it's by J-Flexx. Has got some very interesting features. It's got Lady of Rage. If you guys were down with your West Side stuff, you would know that she was, the female rapper in that crew, Death Row Records at the time. And it's actually got a piece there by the big homie Snoop Doggy Dogg. Now, it's interesting. Gridlock was an interesting movie because it featured my favorite rapper, Tupac Shakur, who, in my opinion, is the best rapper that ever lived and will ever live. Okay? But I got a love for Kendrick Lamar. He might get into that spot soon. But anyway, with Lady Heroin, the lyrics are very interesting because they basically portray, almost this pathological relationship that people suffering with drug dependence, drug addictions have with drugs. What's interesting is the drug in question is Lady Heroin. Now, looking at the musical piece, it's interesting because the music is very trancey. So it almost seems as if the music itself has taken some of this heroin. The music is very trancey. Now, I'm going to spend most of my attention on the first verse. So it starts with the following lyrics. Now, when I first met her, I was down in the dumps. This is very interesting because we know that sometimes with people with addiction or with drug dependence, there can be people who are suffering financial problems or might be homeless, and we get that sense. There's an interesting verse there. It's when it says, "That's when this fly honey walked up to me in a brown leather skirt." And again, this is extremely interesting. Why? Because with addiction, sometimes there can almost be a flirtatious element, particularly when people start using drugs. It's almost like a flirtation, and I think it's very clever of J-Flexx to use those lyrics in that sense. There's also a sense of seduction, because if you think about the term fly honey, it refers to a pretty girl who's flirting with the person in question. Now, what's interesting, it says she walked up to me in a brown leather skirt. Now, the fly honey is the metaphor for heroin. What's interesting is that heroin on the streets is basically called brown. So we have this situation where the guy first starts using heroin. The next few lines then discuss how the drug is used in question. So it says, "So I took her to the crib and sparked a blunt with it." Now that's very interesting because we know with heroin, there are various ways of taking it. Some people light it up in a joint or a blunt. Others use this method called chasing the dragon. There's a very interesting movie called Trainspotting that talks about drug use. But anyway, they light it and it's basically inhaled. Now what's interesting, it says it was the bomb. And the bomb deals with the euphoria that people sometimes get with drugs and with heroin. With heroin, remember that it's acting on opioid receptors. So you're getting a euphoria, but you also have the tendency to get this intense sedation. And some people would say a very sedate euphoria. And what's interesting, you now see the effects when people use drugs over and over again. With a line there, it says, then all of a sudden she starts flipping and script talking about what have you done for me lately. So now we see a situation where the person has gone to who started using drugs succumbs to the drugs. It now moves from an impulsive taking, recreational use to more what we call dependent use. Because it says now, she had me robbing and stealing and ailing. Now what's very interesting is in the DSM-4, the old American classification, they were actually basically talking about how drug use, which leads to legal problems, can be a form of drug abuse. So he's gone from being in control from the more seductive recreational use to a situation where he's robbing and stealing. And it says just to hit the skins, which is really a very good narrative of what's happening. Just to hit the skins is actually an expression of sexual intercourse. So that would basically be a metaphor that the person has gone from smoking heroin and is progressed to injecting. Now, from a public health angle, we know that when people inject, if they share drug paraphernalia, needles and spoons, there might be the risk of contracting HIV, hepatitis C, or hepatitis B infections. And what's interesting, the last line in that verse says, my friends tell me I shouldn't mess with these type of, the word begins with A, H is an expletive. And this is a warning to people who start using drugs and where we have a situation where it progresses from a recreational use to a more dependent use. Thank you.